Okay. This week's show brought to you by Delibird. Go catch yours if you haven't already. Welcome back to another edition of the Boxscore Geeks show. I'm your host, Dre Alvarez, and with me, as always, is my producer, voice of God, man of many hats. I'm going to find you a third nickname at some point, Brian. Brian Foster. Say hey, Brian.
Yeah, what's going on? Yeah, I'll catch all the nicknames that I can. That seems like a fun thing to do. But, yeah, we've been, it's been the holidays. We've been doing 2 shows a month maybe. So we'll be getting back into the swing of things. NBA is crazy right now. Houston and Golden State are neck and neck in both record and SRS. It's the 21st of December today, and they are 0.01 difference in SRS. Toronto is ahead of Boston now in the East by quite a bit. They're kind of flying under the radar. Jason Tatum's looking like Rookie of the Year. Man, it's a hell of a month right now for the NBA.
I'll throw this out there, and I'm hoping to get around to it at some point. Basically, we can't avoid this every year. Ben Simmons recently took a hit because he basically moved from being a wing to a power forward by our metric, and that's just the feed. We grab our positions via Yahoo Sports. And they're not always the best. And then, if a player is like multiple positions, so if you have a Ben Simmons or a Giannis. So Ben Simmons looks a little worse in the Rookie of the Year race, and we actually did get some comments about that on Twitter. It's a regular thing. I'm going to get a little rant in here first, Brian, and then we'll go to more comments.
Just real fast on that, though, before you get into the rant. Tatum is kind of pulling ahead of Simmons, even in ADJP. Not
all right.
So he's playing pretty well, but let's hear the rant.
All right, but let's look. Okay, so now I'm really interested. So I'm going to do rookies. So for those of you that don't know, just the general tutorial. I'm assuming Brian will do this in the background so you can watch. If you want to do it nice and slowly, Brian, so they can check it. If you go to the Players tab on Boxscore Geeks show, Boxscore Geeks, just boxscoregeeks.com, players at the top, so /players. You can click the Rookie tab. By default, we're going to start on 2017, 2018. You can click on the over 170 minutes. Patrick keeps a rolling update. So by the end of the season, it'll be 500. So there's a 500 cutoff. So you don't have these rookies that play 2 minutes, make one shot, and they look like the best thing since sliced bread. And then we'll adjust, we'll order. So you can click on the 80JP48. I know there's been some confusion on this. One of my favorite people, whose name I can't remember, which makes me even happier. He briefly maintained a site for regularized plus minus. Was commenting on this and didn't quite understand how it works. So the wins produced formula, the way it works is we first calculate a player's contribution via the box score. And so this is a box score that has regressed on point margin. Point margin lines up very well with wins. Everybody kind of knows this. Everybody does this. Even if you're using on-off statistics, even if you're using net rating, if you're using BPM, pretty much all of the box score stats that are worth a damn. So F per doesn't count. Per is right out. All of the box score statistics that are worth a damn basically go on the logic of look at point margin, how much my team outscores the opponent. So wins produced starts that. Step 1, calculate it raw. Step 2, this is something baseball has done forever, and wins produced is pretty much the only formula that really does it. That's at least publicly available and more mainstream-ish. Then you adjust for position. And so we, in light of the positionless basketball trope, broke it down 3 ways. We have point guards, wings, and bigs. And the simple logic is the point guard is the person who's responsible for holding the ball. Wings are the people responsible for being on the perimeter. Bigs are the people next to the hoop. Now, if everybody who's watched basketball forever kind of understands that the really, really tall people that are supposed to play close to the hoop, by lieu of getting that position, it's kind of like being a pitcher in baseball or batting fourth in baseball. Just where you're placed is going to dictate your stats. Those players have better raw production. So we adjust for league average by position, and that's how I come away with it. So what Brian is noting here is if we look at Jason, this is nuts right now, Brian, you're right. Jason Tatum, irrespective of position, is a better just raw player than Ben Simmons. But now where we break it down, this is what I was talking about. Ben Simmons is really I hate this position, and I hate Giannis for starting this. He is a point guard power forward. He is the Magic Johnson. So for those of you that don't recall, Makes me feel sad. Magic Johnson entered the league as a star point guard. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar went down injured in the finals, and Magic Johnson stepped in and won Finals MVP his rookie season as starting center. And then he retired due to HIV complications, but made a comeback in the 90s. And he came back despite being a point guard his entire career, his like 12, 13-year career. Actually, I think it was 12 because he went from 1980 to 1991. So I guess 11, actually. And an 11-year career, came back and was a starting power forward, as you do. And there are only a couple of players like that now. Ben Simmons and Giannis Antetokounmpo basically both fall into that boat too, where they're like if you want him to be the point guard, you give him the ball, but if you have another point guard on the court, you put him at power forward. And so that mucks things up a little in that, and there are ways we want to go about this, Brian. Like I do want to grab play-by-play so it can be a little more accurate. It can say, hey, when this lineup is in, when he's playing next to TJ McConnell, he's a power forward, but when he's playing next to, Robert Covington, he's a point guard. We just don't have that here yet. So we fully admit that's a blind spot in the metric. And then this is where my rant comes in. If you look at any model, every model is basically an approximation of reality. So that's any box score statistic. There are lots of other models that we use too. If you're a fan of economics, GDP is supposed to be an approximation of something. If you want to be bored to tears, although it is probably actually interesting, we'd find it interesting, Brian, because we're boring people. Go find an economist at a party and ask them to explain the flaws in GDP. I guarantee you they can talk the entire party to you about it. But models in general have, basically blind spots, flaws, because they're an approximation. So in wins produced, because we have this position adjustment, which other statistics do not, we invariably come up with people that go, your metric says this guy is a power forward, but in reality, he's really more of a two guard if you really think about how he's playing. So you're dinging him too much. And you know what? I'm not actually even going to fight too hard. What I'll just say is I sincerely wish that the amount of energy people put into bashing the couple of players they think the wins produced metric gets wrong, which, like I said, even then, we have a nice trade-off between automated. We have something that can update every night and do this without Patrick and me really needing to do a lot, versus us, scraping over the data every day on our own, which we do not have time for. I just wish that, like Per would get that, because I'll see these criticisms and I'll see the same people spit out, hey, this guy's Per is amazing, or hey, this guy's on-off statistic is amazing. So it's kind of like, it's an interesting one to me where I'm like, on the one hand, I'm a fan of you using our metric. On the other hand, it kind of irks me when I see people use our metric, go really, really hard at places where they go, this metric doesn't hold up to snuff. And our argument on that has always been, Brian, when you use a model, you basically understand where it might have blind spots. And even in the wins produced case, what you could do is you could say, just because we looked at Dirk Nowitzki as a power forward, which, we've had this argument before, he was his entire career, like only this brief window with Sean Marion. And even then he still played a lot of power forward center. Dirk Nowitzki was played as a power forward. You can look at it and say, if I sign him for my team and I play him as a small forward, what would I expect to happen? So you can do stuff like that, and that's what you're supposed to do with models. And it's the same thing. I was having a discussion with a friend today about box score statistics and defense and going, I'm not going to say that players like Marcus Smart, which if you look at the wins produced metric, we'll say is a below average player, I'm not actually going to say that he might not have value as defense. I mean, the Celtics are one of the best defensive teams in the NBA. They're really well coached, allegedly. All this stuff. What I'll say is when you go in with a metric like wins produced or fuck BPM, but heck, it's pretty popular, BPM, which, by the way, if you do use it and you haven't dug into it for fun, is a metric that basically says take more threes, miss them, it makes you a better player. Seriously. But if you go look at a metric like that, understand where it might have blind spots, weaknesses, or changes, and then adjust to those, as opposed to going, I'm really mad that it's wrong in this one case here, so I'm not going to use it. I'll finish this up by just pointing out, if you ever look at what linear regression is, so you've seen this. I guarantee you've seen these stupid things on the internet. I don't know why I call them stupid, Brian, because it's right and it's fine. Seems kind of mean. All right. I guarantee
these smart things on the internet.
These smart things. I guarantee you've seen basically a regression plot. And what that is you'll see a lot of dots, right? You'll see a scatter plot with a lot of dots. And then you'll see a line that's drawn through those dots. And you'll see some number, r squared equals whatever. Now, what you'll notice is every dot is not on that line. What you are basically attempting to do with regression with models is say, I want to make a line that is as close to all of these dots as possible, but I'm going to accept that some of these dots are going to be off. So again, coming back to the wins produced formula, we drew a line. It's a lot closer than a lot of the other lines that use purely box score statistics. And admitted, and what I'll even just throw this out here too. If we had like a bigger budget, if we had like a synergy budget, we would just have someone, or if we had like a better play-by-play scraper, which has been on the back among the many things for those of you that have been fans for years of the show have known, there are like 20 projects that have been on the back burner that are all still very relevant. If we were a tech company, we'd have like a bunch of reds, right? A bunch of, what do you use, Brian? You do like PM stuff, right? Is it 0, 5? What's the priority number?
Oh, you're talking about like velocity of tasks and all that. With where I am right now, it's a little bit simpler than that, but yeah, that's kind of the idea.
Yeah, I'm saying we'd have this big board of just red, hey, you guys should be working on this.
Yeah.
And Patrick and I go, that is a fantastic idea. Jobs and family kind of get in the way. But anyway, so, we could admittedly improve that, and we agree. But all I'm saying is that anybody that's ever used any regression model accepts that there are these dots that are not necessarily on the line, and some of them can in fact be really far off the line with the line still being a good line or the best line. And yeah, it's a weird one, Brian, where it gets slightly frustrating, not in the sense that I mind the criticism. It's that, and I've said this before, I mind the criticism when I see a lot of other sites that are, because, you just heard me bitching about basically how staffed we are, which is, fine. It's frustrating when you see sites like ESPN and 538 that have a much bigger staff, that have people paid, they clearly have like either unpaid interns or low paid interns that could say, hey, go over the box scores last night and mark the positions, and have just bad models. So, yeah, I mean, just a little schadenfreude, a little shade there. That's all I really got, Brian.
Well, I'll push back a little bit. I think the people making that argument are at least arguing in good faith most of the time. I don't think people argue in bad faith against us all the time, and I think most of those people aren't. So that's something. I
think, and again, okay. So by the way,
the other time, it usually happens in the comments. Someone usually jumps in and says what I just said is like, okay, if that guy's position is wrong, just look at the ADJP for now, and that's usually fine.
If you already hated this segment, you're going to hate it even more because basically I'm going to talk us up and make us sound arrogant, which, we are, whatever. What I'll say next is one of the mistakes or credits to the wins produced formula is, even though, and so Dave's not here and he probably won't listen, but if he does, sorry, Dave, the walkthrough of the wins produced formula is not the easiest read in the world. He even admitted in the original book, The Wages of Wins, it was the hardest chapter to get through. And if you go to wagesofwins.com, there's a walkthrough that explains step by step how to calculate the wins produced formula that both Patrick and myself have replicated with help from Dave Barry. It's still not the easiest thing, right? It's and to be fair, I've heard like two funny sides of this. I've heard the Einstein quote, which is, I believe it's Einstein, although he gets attributed with a lot of stuff even if he doesn't. But one of the quotes is, if you can't explain it to a 5-year-old, you don't understand it. And then I've heard the Richard Feynman quote, I believe Richard Feynman's also a popular person who's quoted, which said, if I could explain it to you easily, I believe he answered someone on TV when they said, explain your Nobel Prize winning work. He said, if I could explain it easy to you, I wouldn't have won the Nobel for it. So there's two countering things. But so what I'll say is the wins produced formula, complicated math is not always easy. So it's not the easiest to read in the world. It's not the most simple. But the steps for the wins produced formula have been there since the beginning, and that allowed people to pick it apart. And so as soon as that happened, as soon as people understand how the metric worked, we've seen that where they'll point to specific things. Dan Rosenbaum, who is one of my most hated people in history of the analytics movement, was doing that, was pointing at a position adjustment in the wins produced formula, not a team adjustment in the wins produced formula for years and bashing it, despite the fact that if you look at win shares really for defense, that's just what it does. People being able to think they understand the metric or actually understand it because, all the steps are there. When people understand something better, they'll often be more critical of it. And so one of the advantages a lot of metrics like BPM, like PER have done is they just have not done a super great job of explaining themselves. Although admitted, I actually give this here. BPM actually does have a fairly comprehensive write-up of how it's done. I just believe most people have not read it. Win shares and PER by counter had either very obfuscated or hard to find write-ups for years. But so, I mean, that's to your point about like arguing in good faith that this is bad. I think it's one of those hard things, which is if you explain your work and put it out there, people will start picking apart and say, see, I can see it. Whereas if they don't know how it works, they just go, this number's high. I think it's good. I spent way too long on this, Brian. So let's get back on track. Let's stay on target. Let's go. I like this one from you, Brian. So this is Brian Shade. So I'll let you say it about Matt Moore talking about the Chicago.
Oh, it's kind of half shade. You know, I tweeted to him and he didn't
Total
reply.
shade.
Obviously, he's a big right.
Listing Matt Moore, total shade.
Okay, it's total shade. Okay, so Matt Moore usually great. I like following him on Twitter, but one thing that's going on in the NBA right now is the Bulls, who started out, I want to say 3-20, went on a 7-game winning streak since Mirotic got healthy again after getting punched by his teammate Portis, who was also suspended. So both of them missed games basically.
You know the kryptonite to a 7-game win streak, though.
LeBron James. Tougher schedule. Yeah, exactly.
We'll talk LeBron James more in a bit, maybe. Okay, so continue.
At any rate, so there's an article in The Ringer titled "Bulls on Parade." We've got it right here. The headline. I think this is his biggest issue with the article, and this is not by him, by the way. Matt Moore works for CBS. He's criticizing an article on The Ringer. So this is pretty meta, Dre. We're criticizing a pundit critique. Anyway, Chicago is 7-0 with Nikola Mirotic. And, you know, they go through it and they show some plays. They say he's being aggressive, whatever. It's kind of a non-analytics article. So then Matt Moore says, he tweets out today, during the win streak, on versus off net rating differential, Mirotic negative 2.9, Portis plus 17.2. However, both of them are in the mid-60s in true shooting. And, you know, he basically says, I even replied to him, he didn't answer though. Anyway, he's just saying that even though they're both shooting well, that you should look at Portis instead of Mirotic for this streak due to the on-off. And he was giving one of the lineups had 86 minutes together, something like that. And I'm just like, come on, you're really grasping at straws here. Why can't you just say both of those guys are playing well? Because, I mean...
Yeah, I think so. We're going to talk a lot of stuff here, and we might definitely talk like the Timberwolves in a bit. And so, to your point, the Chicago Bulls are a 10-win team right now, which, as you might guess, there have been significantly more than 20 games for every team in the NBA. So 10 wins is not a good thing. The Bulls are a bad team. And they do have this win streak. Like, I mean, for heaven, if they were even a good team during that win streak, right? They just went 7 for 8. Holy crap! If they were even just like a 60% win team, they'd be even more horrible. The Bulls are a bad team. You're doing the wise thing, which is to say, if you were going to start pointing the fingers at the Bulls and being really hypercritical, it's kind of what we were just talking about the last segment. It's like there are other places to start, and you don't start at. And this was the great point I like that you had. Who gives a damn which of these players is better? They're both really good. And the reason I can say it is because if you look at their numbers, so we might talk Kobe in a bit. When I see people compare like Kobe to LeBron James or Kobe to Tim Duncan or Kobe to Kevin Garnett, I try to use more contemporary names. Kobe to MJ is a little rougher because they were different eras. So some people might claim that maybe Kobe could have competed with Michael Jordan back in the day. Who knows? But the point being, you can make comparisons that are just right out. LeBron James versus Carmelo Anthony is not a question. Whereas like Tim Duncan versus Kevin Garnett, I'm comfortable shrugging my shoulders and saying, I don't care. Pick one, right? That there's probably one that's better, but they're both really close. It's the same thing here. If we look at the wins produced for Mirotic and Bobby Portis, to your point, I don't have the 7 games. I don't have any split stuff up yet, but
I didn't have time for that. I wish I did.
Yeah, but basically the point being, Mirotic is better per minute than Portis. Portis has more wins for the season because he wasn't out with an injured jaw, oddly. But they're both playing really, really well. And during this stretch to what you're saying, they both played really, really well. So, of course, Mirotic's getting the credit, and the huge reason being he's back, right? But trying to argue those guys, we brought these numbers up pre-show. And so let's just go by minute. So I'm sorting the Bulls by minutes played. And so let's run this down. Justin Holiday, -1 point over par, has the most minutes on the team. Robin Lopez, breaking our heart, -1.8 points over par per 48. Reminder, points over par per 48 means that player played the full 48 minutes with an average 4-man backup squad next to him playing against an average 5-man squad for the full game. That's how much you'd expect them to win by. So let negative be an indication that it's bad. Denzel Valentine, with 851 minutes is positive, zero point 0.9 points over par. Lauri Markkanen, our boy, started so good, Brian. 812 minutes, negative 2.4 points over par. Chris Dunn, 731 minutes, negative 1.1 points over par. Jerry and Grant, 697, positive. Bobby Portis, now see, Bobby Portis isn't even in the top six, 452 minutes, plus 4.8 points over par, doing good. But immediately followed by Paul Zipser, 434 minutes, negative 6. David Nwaba playing really well, plus 5.8. Cristiano Felicio next, negative 1. I listed a bunch of negative players with more minutes than Portis or Mirotic. So if you're going to say to the Bulls, hey, we need to worry about this, that's where you should go. So I liked your point. Portis and Mirotic, by our numbers, are close enough in skill where who gives a damn which one's better? They're both playing well. The rest of that team needs some looking at.
Now, I want to go back to sample size a little bit more, because if someone wanted to counter my argument that I just made, you could look at this and say, well, let's go back to per minute here. Mirotic has only played 179 minutes. That's not a lot either. And if you look at his previous 2 years in the league, he was kind of mediocre, although he did improve last year, right? So 179 minutes isn't a huge sample either, but at least it's twice as many. Like, why wouldn't you have a small sample size to begin with? You cut down the minutes even farther to half as much as you have, you know? So, like, I mean, I think by the end of the year, Matt Moore is probably going to be right. Mirotic probably will regress, and Portis might be the better player. Portis was great in college. But, I mean, I just don't like the way he approached it with on-off, that's all.
Well, we've had this argument of it's so So to the exact same thing we were talking last point. If you're able to run down how the metric is put together, you can start picking it apart. And people don't tend to do that for metrics that are harder to find. Well, with this, we've talked this where people think that if they break down the minutes or break down the plays, they start getting too granular. And it's just exactly what you're saying, Brian. Just kind of a shrug our shoulders and saying you don't really have a big enough sample size to be starting to make that distinction or question. So why are you doing it? So that's really all we got. One other point I just want to make here that's interesting is obviously refresh me, who got their jaw broken and who got suspended. So Bobby Portis and Nikola Mirotic got a fight that resulted in who got their jaw broken?
Yeah, so supposedly Mirotic was not a very popular guy in the locker room. And so Portis, this is how it was reported. I don't know if it's true, but so Portis took it on himself to go at him in practice when he was being a jerk. And he punched him and broke his jaw. And Portis got suspended. Mirotic went on the disabled list, or they don't have a disabled list anymore. You know what I mean? He missed games because of that. And apparently everyone wanted him off the team then, but he came back. So that's kind of what I know about what happened.
So that's crazy. But what I think is important, because this is one of these tropes, memes, whatever, that I hate about professional sports, is this idea that players have to like each other to have good synergy and get along. And it's a rough one. It's a rough one for those of us in any normal job. Most of us have had a job where there is someone who is very, very productive, very helpful to the firm's success that we don't like working with. I assume, right? It's a big enough thing.
It's a rabbit hole, but yeah, you're right.
This was the trope of, this was like the trope of the IT guy, right? The IT guy, what was it? Jimmy Fallon had a sketch on Saturday Night Live about that, right? Like the IT guy is just insufferable, but is key because they keep all of the computers working. Now, to not go too far down that rabbit hole, but to at least cut off one thing, I believe if a person is toxic or does things that are not allowed, then it is not worth the trade-off. But all of us can accept some level of trade-off in, I don't like this person, but I understand they are productive at my job. So I agree with you, Brian. It's a slippery slope, but just the point in sports being, it's always amusing to me to say they didn't like this guy. And, one of our favorites that we bring up all the time is Dennis Rodman. The Spurs just got fed up with Dennis Rodman and kicked him off the team because they couldn't stand him. And there are other players I know for a fact that are traded for these reasons. And what I think is important when you're being the nerdy egghead front office guy or coach is to say, you know what? You have to ask what you're trying to solve. Do you want everybody to get along? I'll use the stupid Mike Malone quote. If I wanted to be popular, I'd sell ice cream. Do you want to win games? or do you want everybody happy? And sometimes those things are at ends. So the Bulls honestly made an interesting decision that is working out, which is to say they had two players that didn't like each other that came to blows, and they said, you know what, we have you both on contract, we're going to play you both, and it's succeeding.
They're both playing well right now, so we'll see. But I mean, I think I agree. Just to finish off on the Bulls with your first point, which is that they're just a bad team at this point. That Butler trade was a disaster for them. Everyone kind of knew that, and I think they were trying to tank this year probably. So we'll see if that continues or not.
Yeah, I mean, they are still, even with the, I mean, it's remarkable. With the 7-game win streak, you're still one of the favorites to win top of the draft lottery. That's not a good place to be. And I don't have anything to say. I mean, we can only spend so much time on each show, and I've already wasted a lot railing against how stupid tanking is. So we can just say that again. Tanking's dumb. And I mean, just an interesting point. Despite the early season look, the Philadelphia 76ers in the process finally paying off is kind of reverting. A big part is, and I'm really happy about this, Brian. I'm going to see if I can get this up in front of me. I'm going to call an audible and do a callback. We said comments. I might look at comments, but what I was going to look at is I wrote an article earlier this year, and I called it the most overrated players of the upcoming season. And so let's see. Yeah, the top. Oh, well, that was last year. Funny. I found Joel Embiid, and he's for last year. I had the top 10 questions for the 2016-2017 season. That was last year, Brian, so he sticks around. Let's see if I can find it really quick, because I can only stall for so long because I came up with like 9 players that I basically said I thought were overhyped going into the season, and I actually feel really damn good about it for the most part. So the 8 overhyped players, and I actually did 9.
So this is for 16-17, right? Not 17-18?
And actually, I had a typo in it that you can still see in the URL, because I said for the 2017-2018 season. The original version said 2017-2017 season, Brian. But here are the players. I listed Paul George, Joel Embiid, Lonzo Ball, Paul Millsap, Ben Simmons, Markelle Fultz, Kristaps Porzingis, Carmelo Anthony, and damn it, why did I have to put him for one, Brian? Kyrie Irving. I mean, admittedly, I hedged myself on the front, which I said, I think there's an 80% chance each of these players has a subpar season. So by my own admission, I basically said with rounding, I thought I was going to get 2 of them wrong. So, I said it. Statistically, the probabilistic model, I'm basically doing well. I'm about 7 for 9 right now. The 2 players that, hurt me were Ben Simmons and Kyrie Irving. Kyrie Irving's playing great for the Celtics. Maybe Brad Stevens, not Brad Simmons. Brad Stevens is a fantastic coach. And, Ben Simmons is a fantastic rookie. And it's just not what we're used to seeing. So, I mean, I'm okay if we see a once-in-a-generation rookie talent come out and amazing coaching. But the player that I put, and I just want to come back to this, is Joel Embiid is just, it's really weird to see people get optimistic on a beat-up player for health. It's really weird to see people get optimistic on a beat-up player that has salary provisions about his health, in his contract. So he's out again, and the 76ers have regressed a little. And I want to give you a little credit for something we talked about on the show earlier, Brian. Even in spite of how well Joel Embiid was playing before injuries and how well Ben Simmons is playing, if Robert Covington doesn't see the biggest spike in production, he's easily at this point in the NBA season the most improved player. If Robert Covington doesn't go from being a below average role player to a star, this team wouldn't have even had a winning record before they had a slip, and now they are back in losing record territory.
Yeah, and I'm going to bring up Covington here. So when I was complaining about him, I think the complaint was that he was shooting like 50% from 3 or something like that, and that was not sustainable. So let's see how the 76ers are looking right now. Let's just sort by 3-pointers and see how that goes.
Yeah, I mean, and Covington has, to your point,
so he's down to 39.7. Pretty good still.
And he's come back down to earth. He was a star. He was a legit star the last time we talked. His wins per 48 is 169. I said I'm going to start doing that metric, steal baseball, so go in hundreds. 169, which translates to plus 2.2 points over par. Usually the Brian Foster cutoff, the Brian Foster star cutoff is 3. So he's not a Brian Foster star. He is probably going to just hit the Dre star, which is if he manages to get around 3,000 minutes, he will probably get 10 wins. So he is a very good player, but you weren't, I mean, your analysis, and I mean, it's not, let's be honest, I mean, I'm not going to call you an Andrew Sutton level of prognosticator. Your analysis of 50% three-point shooting is probably not sustainable when, the greatest three-point shooter of all time is on the Warriors, and for full seasons, he's done like 45%. Is not wrong, and he's down to like 40% three-point shooting. So you're not wrong. And so at least, I mean, just, tying the Bulls and 76ers back together, the 76ers process for tanking that looked like it might be working required a player shooting better than Steph Curry. And now that's come back to earth. And, I want to do a little bat pack to say, in the article where I'm right, 7 out of 9 players, I listed Joel Embiid and was right. Just ignore Ben Simmons. The fact that on all of them, I even said, like rookies are just hard to predict and who knows.
Well, I mean, that's the point, right? Is if you had gone to Vegas with that and were able to bet on it, you would have won money, right? You would have hit 7 out of your 9 bets. And that's why we say that, I mean, that's why you pick those rookies to begin with, right? Is because historically speaking, 7 out of 9 or whatever.
In general, if in general, I think it's less than a coin flip that a top 3 draft pick turns into an above average NBA player by their 4th season. That's just the numbers if you look through history. So if you get 3 rookies, and I kind of count Joel Embiid in that category because he only played 30 games last season. If I'm given 3 rookies to bet on and I want to bet all of them fail, from just a purely Bayesian probabilistic model, that's a fantastic one because I know even in the kind of optimistic case, that's a coin flip each for them to be above average, let alone good, which means that's super easy, right? If it's a coin flip each and I'm allowed to bet no on 3, that works out fine.
Yeah, so just to finish up on Covington, the 76ers here, I just want to go through real fast like why I said that to begin with. So, and it's basically just comparing career numbers and previous year, last year's numbers especially, to what they're doing this year and to try to figure out what's going on, right? And this is when you see a player playing differently when they have been throughout their career. So if you look at Covington this year versus last year, it's uncanny how similar his stats are. Couple less offensive rebounds this year versus last year, but a few more assists this year. Steals, blocks, turnovers, fouls, all that possession stuff looks really almost identical to last year. And he had over 2,000 minutes last year and almost 1,000 this year. So this is quite a few minutes we're talking about. So then you go down and look at his shooting, right? Like we were talking about. Well, what's really the big difference? His three-point shooting is way up. Gone down since early in the year, but it's still way above his career total. So, when I look at that and say, well, he hasn't improved his whole game, he's just shooting hot, that's a huge candidate to regress back to the mean, right?
But admittedly, and so Basketball Reference has this, they have shot location.
That's how you go even deeper, yeah.
You go down and you basically notice a change in shooting attempt types. Now, it's kind of a trade-off because he used to take 28.8% of his shots at the rim. And he shot good from there, 58.8%. So he'd take 28.8% of all of his shots at the rim, shoot a little below 60%. And he would take about 56.3% of his shots from 3, which is good. He has upped that to 66.4% this season. And his three-point shooting, basically spiked too. So he did 2 things. He started taking more threes and shooting better. And another, kind of piece of the puzzle, right? We talk about Ben Simmons and we know assists help. It's like, it's entirely possible that he just works better within this offense. It's a funny question. It was one I was going to ask Patrick about, just to kind of plug the piece I wrote this week one more time. So I talked about the top anchors, and these are players on otherwise contending teams, meaning a top 4 seed in their respective conference as of the time of writing, that have, otherwise contending teams that have just one really glaring bad player. The 3 players that I found, Eric Gordon for the Rockets, Andrew Wiggins for the Timberwolves, and Thon Maker for the Bucks. Of those 3, the only one that's really not a playoff problem is Thon Maker, because Thon Maker is a bench player that gets around 20 minutes a game, whereas Eric Gordon and Andrew Wiggins are legit starters that get over 30 minutes a game. I was going to ask on the Timberwolves, because the Timberwolves I've seen lots of criticisms of Karl Anthony Towns' defense, and I've seen some people in the comments comment on basically bad offensive schemes, that Andrew Wiggins takes all these mid-range jumpers. He does take the most shots on that team, which he shouldn't because he is a terrible scorer. If basically that team is just poorly coached, if that team has a bad coach in terms of defensive schemes and offense. And it brings a very interesting question to Covington, is basically if this season is just a better season in terms of, the players around him, if having Ben Simmons opens up better passing lanes and that kind of question. And then if you think it's sustainable, if you think Ben Simmons is going to stay on that team, then Covington's probably a good player for it. So yeah, when you're talking about change of game, shooting efficiency is one of the most malleable stats per year.
Yep.
And so when you see I loved your analysis, Brian. You're saying looking for change in games. Like, is there a giveaway as to what this player has changed to change their performance? And you're saying Covington, it's just his 3-point shooting. But if you think that he's got, if you think the 76ers have a better offense, that's actually very promising. But back to your very, very original point back in the day, he is now a good, not great player. And if you look at the difference between Covington being good and great, this team still has a lot of steps to go.
Yeah, and I'll temper that a little bit by saying that that's kind of all we can do with analytics and wins produced there, right? So what's the next step, really? Well, maybe there's some coaches that have been watching him. Maybe Coach Nick or Patrick or someone could look at him and say, well, he's actually changed his shot in a better way from this season to last. Or maybe there's some reporting that said Covington spent all summer in the gym just shooting like thousands of threes a day or something like that, Maybe he really has improved, but that's kind of the next question to ask.
Yeah, back when we went to the real question on Covington being his contract, and we kind of said we were okay with it because he did get a new like 10 to 20 million, somewhere in that range, contract.
Looking okay so far.
It's fine. It's a fine contract, but the importance of your analysis at that time, which is kind of coming true, and I do love the patting ourselves on the back about stuff, which is just to say, if this team requires Covington being super hot to be an above average team, they might want to be worried and look at what else they need to fix. And the same point, and the same point I'm taking, patting myself on the back as well, me going, don't freaking get on the Joel Embiid bandwagon just yet. I'm fully aboard getting on board that bandwagon if he plays a season and a half healthy. I'll jump on first. But we it's funny because we have lessons from history. We were on team maybe Derrick Rose will come back. I know you liked a comment Dave Barry and I had back and forth because we were talking about the Oklahoma City Thunder, where basically I talked about Paul George and I said it's the Derrick, we love naming things around here. I called it the Derrick Rose cycle, which is you have this player that was really good when they were younger, that has an injury, that is not as good since that injury, and their fans keep going, but what if they come back to as good as they were before that injury? But what if they come back? And we had that several years with Derrick Rose, where we said, if Derrick Rose just comes back 80% as good as he was, not even age adjusted, just 80% as good as he was his best season, this team's going to look good. If he comes back 70%, just play 60 games, they're going to be good. And after 3 or 4 seasons of that, I was like, I'm out. I'm not. If a team has Derrick Rose, I'm not betting on them. And to be fair, right, that was a very astute observation about the Cleveland Cavaliers to start the season. Dave Barry wrote an article that noted the real flaw of the Cleveland Cavaliers was Dwayne Wade and Derrick Rose playing poorly. Derrick Rose has left that team. And since Derrick Rose left that team, a lot's gone better. And, Dwayne Wade has embraced a bench role. So it's a very interesting, observation to say, there's a point where you just break. And so what I'm talking about there was Joel Embiid and Paul George, both of these players being like, don't hop on board them just yet if they've got injury concerns that you are sure are alleviated. And neither of those players are.
It's so tough to say, though, Dre, because like Steph Curry is a great example. He showed flashes his first few seasons and missed a ton of time. Then he got healthy and just went on an historic tear, right? Now, Derrick Rose, when he was young, even in his MVP season, was a little overrated. We probably didn't like him as much as young Steph Curry. But, I can see their injury, going differently than that. But here's the real point with Embiid. I think it's just all eye test on him. Like, people like that he's big, that he's skilled. They like individual plays that he makes. I think people really like his personality. I do personally. I think people think he's like a winning leader type personality, so they like him because of that.
but he's just played so few minutes at this point that I don't think you can say much about him. That's all.
I mean, one thing you can say, and this is an interesting observation that I like, is if you look at Embiid's like really, really good games, right? Like his awesome games.
That's true.
He has an amazing ceiling. Now, I'm saying he's done this more than like once because
he's really good in college too.
That's good. We loved him. We loved where he was picked up. We thought it was a fantastic pickup by the 76ers. But like, for instance, Andrea Bargnani has had over a decade-long NBA career. I think he's done, if I recall, though who knows? Maybe the Colangelos will sign him next year. Andrea Bargnani had over a decade-long NBA career, and there was this brief stretch, this like 2-week window I recall, where he was playing like an all-star. And by like all-star, I mean like what we're bashing Covington for. He was playing like Covington level for this 2-week stretch. We were like, Andrea Bargnani's looking great. And any player, if you give him long enough, is going to look good. What I'll say is Joel Embiid, in this limited time, these 60 games, has put up some amazing, amazing games. I've called it the LaMarcus Aldridge test or principle, where people kind of overrate a few great games and let players off the hook, which is definitely true of Joel Embiid. But if you look at his average, too, it's higher. But I'm just saying his ceiling is clearly there. We've had this comment on like LaMarcus Aldridge, on DeMarcus Cousins. We've had it on a lot of players, and the real question has to be, their ceiling is there. Are they going to get their average up to near it, or at least in a good range? And Joel Embiid at least was looking like it, but it's just, health is one of the hardest things to predict. And so I'm always cautious on that. And that's just the point. And like the same was true of Steph Curry, and the Warriors admittedly won here. The Warriors basically said, we're going to give you a reasonable contract that has, some inherent risk built in for your injury. And if you come back, it's great. And if you don't, you're not going to kill us. And the 76ers, with the contract restrictions they put in for Joel Embiid, did the same, but that's just the point. Us as the fans, you have to do that same kind of marketing to say, if he doesn't get 65 games in a season and 2,000 minutes or something, maybe take a step back and don't stay on it.
Yeah, that's fair. And just to state again, I hope he does live up to the hype, but I think it's a little bit too much right now. I like watching him.
I want to get a little Kobe hated just because it is topical. Kobe became the first player to get 2 jerseys retired. This pisses me off for a lot of reasons. And I understand that my MO is a Kobe hate. And actually, I was debating talking about this, and maybe we will on a future show, about the oddness of Twitter. And admittedly, I've made this mistake. I don't want to come off as this holier than thou. I've never made this mistake. It's a weird part of the internet. But someone basically comes up to you on the internet and is just rude to you, and you don't really know them. And you're like, what the hell? And then the weird kind of implicit part of the internet is supposed to be that if you're at all big, right? And we're not super big, but all of the Boxscore Geeks people have, a couple thousand followers, except for Brian. You guys should work on that. Follow Boxscore Brian on Twitter. This weird culture of the internet, which is supposed to be, you're supposed to just suck it up when someone's rude to you on the net. And so I know some people hop in and were rude about kind of the stuff I've said about Kobe. And what I mean by rude to you on the net, I don't mean commenting on sports, because that's what we do. I mean adding a person. I'm not a fan of that. I'm not a fan of adding athletes. I'm not a fan of adding writers if you're just going to be rude. I have no complaints about people talking about public things, public articles, public games. I do have a very real problem about adding. I don't think subtweeting is rude. Subtweet away. But, so I got some pushback about some of my Kobe hate. But it is topical for this. And it's really weird that he gets as much adulation as he does, especially from the Lakers. And it's off-putting to me. And the reason the 2 jersey thing is off-putting is the reality is the first three-peat with Kobe, the reason he gets 2 jerseys is because he had number 8, number 24. He had number 8 basically for the Shaq era, and then he had his new one for his rebirth, whatever, and they were tying both jerseys. If you're going to do that, you have to just be very candid with yourself and say Shaq was really the driving force behind that first three-peat. And I'll give some fun Shaq stats. There are only 2 players that have 3 MVPs, finals MVPs, back-to-back-to-back. They are Michael Jordan, he did it twice, and Shaquille O'Neal. Only 2 players in NBA history. And then I believe there are only 3 players that have the Triple Crown, which is finals MVP, regular season MVP, all-star MVP in the same season. I believe that's Walt Frazier. I believe that in the 70s. Michael Jordan did it twice because Michael Jordan does everything twice, and Shaquille O'Neal. Shaquille O'Neal for the Lakers was just freaking ridiculous. And I feel in Lakers lore, Lakers fan lore, the fact that they're retiring 2 jerseys, I said that. I said, Kobe's overrated. People are rating Kobe over Shaq. Had someone push back and say, Shaq, everybody except Shaq was great. They're not giving Kobe more love than Shaq. And my response is, I don't see the Bulls hanging 2 Pippen jerseys to MJ's 1 in the rafters. So I did want to get that off. And it's just always weird, the reverence that Kobe gets because there are other players. That's kind of my problem. When people talk his work ethic or his will to win or all this other crap, there are other players in the NBA that have all done that. So it's almost, to put him at the top of this weird pedestal that people have is very odd to me. And, it's very easy to say, you talk about Kobe so much, and my only retort will be I am a sports pundit, and the sporting world has not stopped talking about Kobe. It's been one of my bread and butter things for my entire sports history. So it's kind of weird to be like, why are you still talking about Kobe? When I'm like, well, that's something I've done for years. I'm kind of a Kobe hating expert at this point. And I'm one of the Kobe hating experts that's kind of pisses people off, because I will say I have great respect for Kobe. I think he's a fantastic player, had a fantastic career. I think he is probably top 5 all time if you're talking about longevity, meaning players that had like a 15+ year career that played great through like 12 of those years. But that being said, I'm still going to be a Kobe hater as long as Kobe's still in the headlines. And he put himself there twice with his jersey retirement. So at least wanted to get that in on the show, Brian. I didn't get a post or anything out about it.
I've turned on this a little bit. So when it was first announced that he was going to have 2 jerseys retired, that was a couple months ago, right? You and a lot of people on Twitter were kind of pissed off about it. And at the time I was kind of like, that I don't really see it that much. I don't care. But then when I actually saw it happen, when I saw the 2 jerseys go up there, flanking, I guess, Chick Hearn, and then there was, a few others above it, I'm like, man, he has most of that real estate to himself. Then he spoke forever, and all these different people spoke about how great he is.
The Warriors won that game, didn't they?
They did, barely.
Thank God.
And the joke was that Klay Thompson and Kevin Durant played Kobe's style that game by launching a million, isolation bad shots.
I did not expect, I would never take a bet this season, because we're talking about probabilistic models, I would never take a bet that Lonzo Ball was going to outshoot Kevin Durant. Now, admittedly, Kevin Durant got more points, but if we're talking efficiency, Lonzo Ball had a more efficient game than Kevin Durant, which I did not see coming.
Anyway, my last thing on that is just to see all that suck-up happening after we had to deal with his going away tour last year. Like, every single road game was like, oh, this is Kobe's last game in the city. And to have this happen, during Me Too is going on, I'm just like, just leaves a bad taste.
Well, and I mean, what's really weird about that, we'll only talk a little bit about it because I know it's not the most fun topic. Kobe obviously had sexual assault allegations in Colorado. There was a trial. It's obviously part of the him and Shaq breakup, because that was a big distraction during that season. And there are interviews where he basically said, I see her point of view, meaning the assailant said she didn't think it was consensual, and he basically said, I thought it was, but I could see how she would think that. And you kind of go, what? And the reality is the media, especially the Lakers media, basically turned off that story. There are a lot of reasons, it's just a rough case about our system where essentially if a person doesn't look like they're a good character in court, in spite of something bad happening to them, the court system will often rule against them. That's just, it's a weird thing, and we could go on that forever. The idea of this weird logic of, well, if you're a bad person, it's okay if bad stuff happens to you, even if it's against the law, whatever.
Yeah, and predators pick out people they think will have flaws, so they'll have less character support when they go after him. It's fucked up.
But so to all that point about Kobe, yeah, what makes him particularly rough with all of what you're saying is, right, his entire career he's basically gotten away with everybody saying he's great. And I'm gonna bring up 2 weird examples. One reason this is probably extra rubbing me the wrong way this year is obviously Trump. We have a fucking narcissist in office who is crazy. I'm angry every day. I am scared every day.
Me too.
I mean, what I'll at least say is, if you as a white person are being scared, that's even better, just because the point is, as a minority, when suddenly you see someone up on stage basically yelling hate stuff against you, and you're like, I've got a kid, and this is a weird thing. I live in a pretty progressive part of Wisconsin, despite the fact that Wisconsin did vote Trump. I live in Appleton. Appleton, it has a lot of stuff because it's a college town, a lot of diversity, a lot of good, the actual local government is very good for a lot of diversity stuff. There were complaints about not hate crimes, but like hate speech against kids in elementary school. And I had to watch that and go, I'm going to have to deal. Like, what am I going to do? Like in a couple of years when my kid's in school, am I going to have to deal with this? What the hell? And basically, you have a sycophant up on stage, and Donald Trump's a very annoying one, too, where during the election and during his entire career, he's basically just had people that have been okay saying you're great. And, it was so annoying towards the end of the election when some of the stars started going, oh, my God, he might actually win, and started actually coming forward with stories like, yeah, I know Trump and he did this, right? Obviously the Hollywood Access tape, all this stuff. And you were kind of like, where the hell were you earlier? And so the same reason I'm kind of getting annoyed about like Kobe is that exact same thing. It's like, I will give you that Kobe is a good basketball player. That's fine. But his entire career, like what you were saying, right? The Lakers gave him $50 million when he was well past his prime. He got all this, he was getting all defensive teams when he was past his prime and not worth it. Everybody's been telling him he's great. Why the hell do I have to keep watching people suck up to Kobe when there are very obvious flaws about him, not that people know about? Like, that just gets frustrating. And like, again, maybe it's just the client, maybe it's just, because it's one of those, like, you want to go to sports to avoid thinking about other worlds. And you can see we've brought Trump and politics up on like every show for the past 2 months, which is understandable. It's kind of like, I don't want that to bleed in. And then the other person I'll give you is, I was talking about this this week. If you recall Michael Jordan, the Michael Jordan to LeBron James comparisons are great. They're both great, but I think LeBron James is easily the greatest of all time. And this season, I mean, if he finishes this season with 15 plus wins produced, doesn't even need to lead the league in it, but just does that, that's going to be something special. This season is ridiculous.
Yeah, we'll have to see like the oldest person to produce that many wins before. Probably Kareem, but
John Stockton. It's John Stockton.
Oh, he was 39 or something. Right?
Aha! It's
yeah,
easy. You know that. But anyway, all I was going to say about that is that Michael Jordan, when he retired to play baseball, he came back, obviously. For those of you who don't recall, he did a movie called Space Jam kind of during that period. And in that movie, there was a subplot about him playing baseball and then how like playing with the Looney Tunes is why he came back to play basketball. And during the baseball subplot, he's basically saying that everybody was just cheering him on and they were just being too nice to him, and he couldn't play, he couldn't compete at baseball because everybody was being too nice to him. So like Michael Jordan had to sell the narrative of, I was bad at baseball because everybody was too nice to me. That's why I came back to basketball. And we've noticed this about a lot of, hyper talented people where they reach a certain place where they're like, you are not allowed to criticize me. And eventually it does reach a boiling point where you're like, you're great, but for F's sake, you're not perfect and you're not above criticism. And so that's kind of where I'm at. And, it's one of those where Kobe just represents a lot of that. And he has for his entire career. I'm like, why the hell do we keep having to show this guy love and respect? It's not as if he hasn't already gotten awards and accolades that he deserves. Why do I have to be behind ones that he does not?
Yeah, and it's a tough question. I mean, just a few minutes ago, we were talking about how you have to put up with jerks in the workplace if they're high performers. But then maybe we're saying now, well, is Kobe too big of a jerk with what he's done? I mean, these are really tough questions that we're going through right now.
Yeah, and to be fair, I will just throw one more thing out there. The age of social media is very fascinating because certainly many people that have gotten a better reputation due to history, Michael Jordan hugely, it would be a much, much different story if they'd existed in the social media era, and who knows how that would have gone. So yeah, it's a new world. Did want to give a little, I guess I'll end with this. We do not have time. So Brian, put a pin in it, maybe next week, maybe 2 weeks. Maybe we'll get time to see more because it's just too big of a topic. The G League is on Twitch.
Yes. We are actually, let me interrupt you real fast on that. We are now broadcasting with tags that are like basketball and NBA, so we're not like anonymous anymore. I haven't quite sorted that out, but maybe we'll actually join a basketball community on Twitch at some point. But anyway, go ahead, Dre.
It would be fun to do something like if we could do like watch a G League game while we're talking, do that and just talk back and forth, try not to get distracted. But
that's what they want. They're in fact getting like their top like NBA 2K players to host stuff like that and bring their players in. So that's what they're trying to move towards.
Love it. But the G League is on Twitch. Vince McMahon is opting out of some of his money in the WWE to try and go towards a new football league, the XFL, bringing it back. Follow American Numbers on Twitter. He has some great tweets on it. I hate to say it. This might not be a bad idea. It might work out well. LeVar Ball maybe trying to take on the NCAA, which we have lots of thoughts on. This is huge. We want to talk this in the future. At least we put a pin in it. Look it up. That's your homework, listeners. Go look it up, and we'll talk about it next time. And we're probably going to take next week off, maybe because it's a holiday week. We'll see. I wanted to get that out there. But I wanted to get this little anecdote out. Houston looks amazing in large part because of Chris Paul. Obviously, he did get injured last game, and they lost a close game with the streak to the Lakers. But the CP3 Chris Harden experiment seems to be going well. Now, as I noted, they for those of you that might be out there saying they're the best bet to take on the Golden State Warriors, the one problem with that bit of analysis is, one, Kevin Durant is taking a little while to get back. He had a really bad start to the season, but has been playing really well lately. Two, Eric Gordon is terrible and gets major minutes. And one piece of logic we've had is, in the playoffs, teams tend to shorten their rotation. If you look at the top of the Golden State Warriors rotation, Curry, Durant, Iguodala, how am I dropping? Draymond Green. I don't know who else they'll put.
Klay Thompson in there.
How did I dropped Klay even though he gets the most minutes?
He's the one that. Oh, I'm not on screen right now. Sorry. He's the one that I would drop out of those top five if I were the coach. But
he's more than fine. I mean, we can give lots to him. Omri Caspi, there is not a weak link on that list. The top of the Warriors looks amazing. I forget. Sean Livingston's like their weakest player, and he's still below.
David West is having the best year of his career. He's one of the leading shot blockers in the NBA. This is something we really need to talk about eventually, analytics-wise. The Warriors are having an historic shot blocking season, even though they're playing so-called small ball.
I wonder if there's coaching on it. So anyway, the Warriors, no weak links. The Houston Rockets, though, have a very glaring Eric Gordon week and a Ryan Anderson who's outperforming what I would expect. So I'm not worried just yet. The only real fear I have for the Warriors, Brian, and it's going on right now, is injuries. During the regular season, the Warriors can put up with playing their bench against weaker teams. In the playoffs, if Draymond Green and Steph Curry aren't back healthy for the playoffs, it's going to be worrisome. I wanted to give one more thing because obviously Doc Rivers basically chased Chris Paul off of the Clippers. There was a story out on Twitter. I don't know how true it is. Bruce Bowen claimed that Tim Duncan was set and ready to go to Orlando. This was back when Doc Rivers, I believe, was either the coach or GM there. I believe it was coach. And Tim Duncan basically said, "Hey, is it okay if my family takes the team plane sometimes?" And Doc Rivers said no, and Tim Duncan basically said no. And so, I mean, it's basically kind of like the culture fit. He knew that the Spurs would be nicer to him than the Magic, and obviously that's worked out well. So here's the weird thread and trend. It is possible now that Doc Rivers has chased one of the best players in NBA history from Wake Forest off of their team, which, that's an impressive statistic for Doc Rivers.
I wonder if Duncan and Paul are the two best Wake Forest players of all time. I'd be surprised if they aren't.
Really? Is that really a question?
I don't know. There could be someone ridiculous we're not thinking of, but
there's an unknown player that went to Wake Forest that we can't think of right now.
Can I put you on the spot, Dre? I didn't see where that was sourced from. That's like a crazy story. Do you remember where that story came from?
Twitter, and I did retweet it. And so,
okay.
but it was Bruce Bowen announcing.
Interesting.
No, this is a fascinating one, Brian.
Is Bruce Bowen reliable? He was a dirty player in the NBA. Do you trust him? It's probably true. I wouldn't be surprised.
So here's an interesting one. Here's an interesting out, Brian. They may have, in fact, they have to now because of this. Muggsy Bogues was also at Wake Forest. So Wake Forest has to have produced the best pound-for-pound players in the NBA when you look at Chris Paul and Muggsy Bogues. That's fascinating. All right, but thank goodness nothing personal. We've said Muggsy Bogues, around 100 wins produced for his career. Great player, probably the greatest short player in NBA history. I am going to put Tim Duncan and Chris Paul above him at this point.
Shout out to Fat Lever, another great small player who just was recently honored.
Yeah, but
awesome. He didn't go to Wake Forest though.
All right, so that's everything I have, Brian. Do you want to do the outro teaser, and then I'll just or out any shout outs or anything like that, and then I'll just take us out?
No shout outs except that we are gonna do another Star Wars show with the amazing author and Spurs fan EJ/Eugene Fisher. So that'll be in the next few weeks. We haven't planned it yet. Maybe next week, maybe in January. And yeah, Star Wars is awesome. Go watch it.
Yeah, we all went and saw it. Looking forward to talking about it for sure. Shout out I'll give. I put this in the tease. Pokemon Go. I still play. It's huge. Delibird just got released. A bunch more Gen 3 got released. It's a lot of fun. I'm very excited. It's happening around holiday time. So yeah, if you play Pokemon Go, let me know in the comments because I do for sure, and it's a lot of fun. With that's been our show. This has been the Boxscore Geeks show. If you found us not through the website, you can find us at boxscoregeeks.com. We go live every week, usually Tuesday or Wednesday at 9:30 p.m. This is kind of mean to you guys. We went Thursday this week to try and make sure more of us were on, but then schedules got in the way because it's a holiday week. But Tuesday or Thursday or Wednesday or Thursday, Brian, who knows, 9:30 p.m. Eastern.
We'll work on it.
Twitch.tv/nerd numbers. Maybe it'll be part of an NBA community at some point or a basketball community. If you missed the live show, you can catch the recaps. Channel Nerd Numbers on YouTube. I've been your host, Ray Alvarez. You can find me on Twitter as Nerd Numbers. Producer, voice of God, man of many hats, Brian Foster. You can find on Twitter as Boxscore Brian. With us in spirit, if not with us personally, co-host NBA Geek Patrick Minton. That's been our show. We'll see you next time.